Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Clint. I am the host of the Claim to Game podcast. Excited to be with you guys today. We're going to be going over how to stop losing players, how to keep more players at your table. It is something that is a pain point of mine. It's something I've had to struggle with over the course of my 10 plus years doing live games, online games. I know that there are many people out there that have been playing for over 30 plus years. So I kind of new to the game when it comes to running games, but I am not new to trying to figure out why people aren't necessarily staying. But I want to make sure that you have as many people staying as possible. So here's what I need you to do: make sure that you stay to the very end. We have some really awesome things that we want to share with you. I want to cover a special offer that's only going to be offered for people who listen to this live stream, but I promise that you will find value regardless of whether you take that special offer or not. So the design of our live today is to make sure that we give value, you get value, you have things that you can take and apply and put your strategy into play right away. You don't need to take any sort of special offer or anything in order to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to make sure that you guys can see my screen because we're going to go through some of those special offers today. All right, first things first. How do you stop losing players? And why is it important to try to build groups that last? Well, there's a few reasons why you want your group to last. The first is your time. It takes a lot of time for you to put together a game. If you are a game master, whether you play Dungeons and Dragons or you're more of a D&D individual outside of D&D, maybe you have tons of games that you play that aren't necessarily made by Wizards of the Coast, aren't necessarily made by anybody from Hasbro. They're games that are in different settings. Maybe they're not fantasy settings or whatever. Usually, starting a game begins with you needing to create uh, an idea of what that game is like, and you do that by reading the rules. Usually, reading the rules, maybe watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, maybe actual live plays. It can take a lot of time to learn how to play a game. So, you want that time to be a good investment. You want your group to last. If you spend all this time and investment trying to get a game to last, but it only lasts a few a few months, maybe even a few weeks, that's not a good use of your time and your effort, right? I said there's a lot of effort that goes into making a game that lasts. So we want to make sure that what you're doing and the time that you're spending is being used for games that can last for years to come. Another bummer for me is stories. Storylines. I imagine. I think of the Firefly sci-fi series that came out many years ago now, and it had two seasons. I think it had two seasons. Some people said, "Oh, that was the perfect amount. It shouldn't have gone farther than two seasons." But imagine your favorite story just ending. Imagine if you were reading Lord of the Rings and the story just ended at the very end of the Fellowship of the Rings. And in case anybody wants to go read that book or watch that movie, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but I will tell you the story isn't finished. Every character is left in some sort of conflict. What if your story that your players and you were telling was just left at a moment of pivotal conflict, a moment where characters either grow and their abilities get stronger and the storyline gets juicier, but then the game ends because your crew can't get back together or you can't schedule another game uh, because of some of the reasons and some of the obstacles that we'll cover in just a little bit. And then lastly, the relationships. There are so many awesome relationships that you can make in the tabletop role playing hobby. It is amazing how welcoming, how inclusive, how kind the individuals are that I've interacted with who are a part of tabletop role playing games. And that's why you want your games to last because there are some things that you can only do and I guess ways that you can only grow relationships when you're telling stories and having shared experiences with one another. I'm going to go through a few of my games that I have started running from the time I began game mastering, and some of the things that I have run into, some of the things that have frustrated me. The very first game I ever ran was called The Last Pearl of Chanel. You may never have heard of it because it's a homebrew adventure. I created it myself. I was so pumped to play a tabletop role playing game. So excited to get a group together that I made my own campaign. I used Roll20. It probably took me about 50 hours of preparation. I was reading up on the rules of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition at the time. That was the game that I was starting out with. I was trying to make my own maps. The picture that you see on the far right hand side are tokens that I created using images for my characters. Once they sent me the image, I used a pretty nifty tool called Token Stamp. I can send anybody who wants it a link after the live stream. If you give me a way to contact you, it's so easy to just take an image, make a quick token, and then use a virtual tabletop to display your characters going through the map, going through the story. And so it took me about 50 hours to use all these different tokens and to use some of the built-in tokens that were on Roll20. And then on top of that, we ended up playing. It was me and three other friends. We would use Roll20's built-in video system, where it wasn't the best. The webcam system would sometimes conk out, and we would need to turn off our camera in order to keep the speed of the game going. Back in 2015, things have gotten a lot quicker, faster, and easier since then. But we played about 30 hours of gameplay. So, I mean, I think this campaign lasted about 6, maybe 8 months. It was about 80 hours of investment. And what happened was we ended up having a lot of rotating players, players that started in the game, maybe for a couple of sessions, and then they're like, "Oh, it's not really for me." In fact, that Dragonborn over on the far right hand side, his name was Zendrick. His character, his player, decided that D&D just wasn't for him. He chatted me after the game and said, I don't know about these rules. I'm not really sure if this is the game that I want. I think next session will be my last. And he did his last session. And then we had a very interesting situation with a werewolf. And I'm pretty sure Zendrick self imploded on himself. So lots of frustration with that because the player did a wonderful job role playing, was having a lot of fun with other people. It just wasn't the right fit game. So then we brought in a different character, the half orc barbarian that you see on the left hand side. This fella came in when the story had already had several sessions. So trying to get him up to speed, it almost felt like replacing an actor. If you've ever watched a favorite show and been like, what? I can't believe they changed the actor or actress. Or I'm thinking of Back to the Future 2 when the actress who played Jennifer from Back to the Future Part 1 was no longer there for good reasons. But it's a bummer to have that rotating schedule. And then on top of that, we probably would have played more, but there was a lot of rescheduling, right? And that's just normal. Flexibility and normal life, that's going to be something that occurs when you have human beings that have a life outside of gaming. But that rescheduling did not allow the game to last. The momentum of the story, the momentum of our players really diminished. It also fizzled out, fizzled out because of the rescheduling, because of the rotating of players and like that. I put 12 months. It was probably 12 months of back and forth, only about 8 sessions of play. So I learned from that. And what I got to do prior to COVID, this was in the years just before 2020. I had an in-person game where I actually did a hybrid version of this. I used Roll20 up on a television screen while everybody was sitting around the table. They could bring a tablet or their own laptop and then move their tokens to where they wanted on the board. I used MT Black, who's a fantastic writer, creator of 5e material and other adventures. You can find a lot of his stuff on Drive Through RPG. He had a game, a quest, a adventure path called Expedition to the Lost Peaks. Really cool way to get people thinking about space coming into a fantasy world. There was a little bit of sci-fi mixed in at the very end. So not for everybody. Some people don't like mixing the streams of sci-fi and fantasy, but would highly recommend the Expedition to the Lost Peaks. So this is where I had a misconception. I thought that the more I prepared, the more I prepped, the better the game would be and the longer my crew would stay. So I did about 100 hours of preparation. Some of the maps that came along with the Expedition of the Lost Peaks adventure path, I converted so that they could upload to Roll20. I spent a lot of time creating tokens that looked really good in the digital space, so that my players would feel immersed. I read through the adventure path first, and then also tried to really get myself understanding what my players would go through. So I prepped, I prepped. And we played about 50 hours, which, if you think about that, that's sort of like a video game. Some video games that you may have played also have about a 50-hour time. I think that would be like me playing through some what is it, Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate is about 50 hours of gameplay. Diablo 4, I've done a little bit more than 50 hours of gameplay on that. So thinking about this, it was like us being able to play through a video game. And let me go back to the first half here. So then that's 150 hours invested, and that 150 hours gave me the same experience. It was still a rotating player schedule. There were players that started out. I had a friend who played a half orc that decided he was going to use this Misfits symbol here. We also had some Dragonborns in and out. There was a druid that played, and then we had I think it was a fighter that came in after the druid had to leave due to moving somewhere else. So there was a rotating schedule of players. We often had to reschedule, and we played on a monthly basis. So sometimes we wouldn't get to play, and that diminished the momentum. And it fizzled out. It fizzled out, and after about 18 months, so just about a year and a half, the actual group disbanded, and we no longer played. And that was probably okay, because COVID-19 happened right after that, and quarantine hit in. All right, let's do one more here. Maybe two more. So, Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I decided, well, maybe it was the platform. Maybe I just needed a better platform with technology. And I tried to look at the platform that had the most customization, of all the different virtual tabletops. And Roll20 was great for accessibility. I still use Roll20 sometimes today. Foundry had a lot of really cool nooks and crannies and things that I could customize and automate, really in the realm of Pathfinder Second Edition, which was a game that I then switched to. I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm playing D&D 5e. Maybe it's the system. Maybe that's why my games aren't lasting. I need a system that I think is cooler, or that I think has more customization. So I'll switch. So I got the Agents of Edgewatch adventure path from Paizo. Breakdown is that there's a festival going on in the land of Absalom, in the world of Pathfinder, and there needs to be some sort of protection because there's an influx of people coming to the city for the festival. So the Edge Watch are basically a police force that helps keep the peace, and your characters, your player characters, are those individuals. And so I prepped about, not 100 hours. Let me go back here. I prepped about 20 hours for this. I was like, well, I'm going to get a pre-made adventure path, and all this is going to be, it was actually really easy to bring it over to Foundry because there's people who had already made assets for it. So less prep, about 12 hours of play. Okay, so we did not finish this adventure path. We did not get all the way through it. About 32 hours invested. So I prepped less, didn't play as much, and it was the same sort of pattern. We started out strong. We ended up rescheduling often. It eventually fizzled out, and we had about 6 months of gameplay. Last tip here, last little experience that I've had, we had Abomination Vaults. So Abomination Vaults is one of the most acclaimed adventure paths from Paizo. It's even been ported over for people to play it in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Only 10 hours of prep. Once again, I did a pre-made adventure path that loaded directly into my virtual tabletop. We played for about 20 hours, 30 hours invested, and it was a similar experience. Started out strong, rescheduled often, fizzled out, 12 months. So here was my takeaway. My takeaway was that the hours prepped and the hours played had little correlation of the longevity of my group. If you look at that red line on the bottom, those are the months that were played. And the blue line on the top was how much I actually was able to play with other people and including the time that I prepped. So you'll notice that my prep time went down significantly, but my game time did not go up at all. If anybody's in the chat, go ahead and enter in the number one if you have felt this experience. One, if you have felt the experience of games not lasting, having to eventually fizzle out or not be able to keep the game going because there's a rotating schedule of players, there's a rotating cast, the story gets disrupted, and you think if you just prep or do something better, somehow the game will last longer. All right. Now, there's a few challenges I want to address before we get into how do you deal with this. Challenge number one that I hear all the time on Reddit, that I hear all the time from people who are trying to play these games, trying to get a group together. Challenge number one is we just can't get together. Some exact quotes that I've heard: scheduling games creates problems. Someone cancels and we miss a game night. Another one would be I can't find anyone to play with consistently. And then lastly, players aren't committed enough to run long campaigns. All of these quotes really come out of a frustration of I don't know how to keep my people together. I don't know how to get everybody together so we can actually do the thing, which is playing the game. And then the second challenge is we can't get along. Some of the ways that people I've even departed from groups is, other players may talk about things that are uncomfortable to me. We'll get into a little bit how you can keep your tables secure and how you can keep your tables safe. Also, standing alone and wanting to play by the rules. We lovingly call these individuals rules lawyers, right? People who want to play the game as written. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've played with some rules lawyers that have actually really helped me along when rules seemed a little unclear to me as a game master, or even as a player. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people that say that don't focus on the rules so much. I want to have fun. And at its essence, this challenge is really a unbalanced expectation, right? It's an unbalanced expectation of what are we trying to accomplish here in this game? What are we as players wanting from this? And it might be that some people want to play the rules as written, other people just want to have fun and want to be able to bend the rules. But regardless, the table has to have a clear expectation of what they are going to be doing. All right. So before we get started in the important deets, please reduce your distractions. I really want you to stay to the very end because there's a few quick things that I want to make sure are clear. One, we're going to have fun. I'm going to go through, I'm going to interact, we're going to talk, we're going to ask some questions here. The second thing is you're going to learn at least one thing that you didn't know. If you just learned one thing that you didn't know prior to us getting together today, great. That's wonderful. If you learned at least one thing that you didn't know before, that's a success and you can apply it and put it right into the way that you run and manage your games. And then lastly, I really want you to know that this is a window into a one of my brand new beta online courses called Building Games That Last. So this is, the content that I'm talking about today is a window into that course. You will 100% find value today, whether you decide to take the special offer that I have at the very end or not. I'm just glad you're here, and I'm glad that you love tabletop gaming, and I'm glad that you're here so that we can try to help you along in making your games last long. I actually sent out a Reddit post not too long uh, before the start of this live stream, and it is amazing how many of the things that you are about to learn are consistent across thousands of gamers, thousands of game masters who have managed to create games that run 3 or more years. And when I say three or more, the more means like some people have been playing since the 80s, and the same main core group of people have been there the entire time. Some people have been playing the last 5 or 6 years, and it's been a rotating cast of characters, but it still felt fulfilling because of some of what you're going to learn. So stick around to the end. Can't wait to talk about some of it. So, first, there is a player retention system. that I've created based on what other people say works and what I've found works after some of my flubs that I've done with other groups. I've learned along the way. So pick your favorite Rob. ROB. It's an acronym, but whether it's Rob Schneider, Robin Williams, uh, Rob Lowe, literally Rob Lowe. You see Tony Stark, I mean Robert Downey Jr. there, or maybe Robert Patterson, although you might be a little confused to not see him moping in a tree with a very pale face. But really, ROB stands for reliability, session zero, and the blueprint. Okay, so reliability, session zero, and the blueprint. These three things are what can keep your games lasting longer and provide just a better environment for games to last long if they are going to. ROB does not stand for that little robot that Nintendo brought out in the 1980s. I really wish I could have got this guy. He was a mixture between ET and maybe like R2D2, but it was supposed to interact with your Nintendo Entertainment System. That is not what ROB stands for. It is reliability. I kind of cheated. The O is kind of a zero, but we're using it as an O. Session zero and blueprint. So reliability, session zero, and blueprint. All right, first off, the reliability formula. You build a group that actually shows up consistently, eliminating the endless scheduling headaches that kill most campaigns. The first thing that's come up is consistency. Consistency. Uh, the tip number one with consistency is you have the same date and the same time, no matter what. So if that is that your group decides they are going to play on Monday nights at 7 p.m. your time, that's when you play, whether everybody can show up or whether everybody can't show up. So it is success with consistency. You are going to do the same date, same time. Don't change it up. It has been constantly commented on Reddit and other social platforms that when players and GMs try to change the time from one session to the next, to a different day or to a different time, that will kill a group. Overall, trying to cater to everybody, you cater to nobody. So be flexible, though. It's okay if some people can't make it. There's going to be times where your players aren't going to be able to make the game, make the time that you have set out. That is normal. We are scheduled. We are human beings that have schedules outside of our games, but being able to be flexible is a good fit. One way to be flexible is to play no matter what. So even if your main storyline, let's say the game that I was playing with the Agents of Edgewatch, if one player couldn't join, yeah, that's fine. Two players can't join out of the four, that's okay. Usually, most GMs, and this has been fairly consistent, have the rule of one half. As long as half of the players are able to attend, they'll play. If less than half of the players, including the GM, are unable to attend, then they will still play, but they will play a different game. Now, that may be a one shot with the same system, just exploring the character arc of that individual character's player or player's character. Or maybe it's a completely different game. So I put some of these games up here: Kids on Bikes, Iron Sworn, Starforge, and Blades in the Dark, because these are games that you could have in your back pocket to pull out on a night when you know that you have less than half. And the fancy term for that is a quorum. If you don't have a quorum for your players, you'll want to continue to play because that consistency is what keeps games running long term. If somebody can't make one night, they know that that same night the next week is going to be up, and you have a better chance of them coming back. So that rule of half, the rule of one half, you can round up, round down, but at least half the players should be there for you to do the normal game, and then less than that, people will usually play a different game. Even if it's a board game, it doesn't have to be a tabletop RPG. You could just be having a conversation, or you could be playing some sort of video game online. Just keep that social interaction happening at the same time, same place. I have an example. So when I was running oh shoot, what was that? When I was running the game for the Abomination Vaults, there was a night where only one of the four players was able to join. And so I used one of my absolute favorite games, Honey Heist by Grant Howitt, came out in 2017. And I had an individual game where the honey was needing to be stolen by a group of bears. All right. So, my buddy Matt, friend of the podcast, friend of the show, friend of this YouTube channel, he was going solo as one bear trying to steal the sweet Manuka honey from the queen bee in a, I think, broken up, beat up mansion that had been turned into a convention center. Right, a little wacky, a little goofy. He did end up getting the honey and speeding away in his getaway car. But that was a wonderful time together. It was a lot of fun. I had that game revved and ready to go on Foundry. I had some tokens that were already made. I'm pretty sure I had a picture of John Cleese, the actor, who ended up being the owner of the establishment, as well as the crooked side hustling side hustling villain. But of all those things, like the story, the important part here is that we still played. So keep it consistent. You may even have more fun than you thought you would when the main game needed to cancel or postpone. All right, the next is session zero. So, session zero, for anybody who's new and you're like, what the heck is a session zero? Session zero is a time where you meet before the first session of the game. And typically, some people have watered this down to just making your characters. So, putting the stats on your character sheet in the boxes. It's so much more than that, right? It's so much more than that. What it really is you are getting together to try to immerse your characters and your players into the world, into the setting. There's some session zeros that are built in to the stories. So, session zero for Ironsworn Starforge that I've been playing through with my buddy Ben, that game starts you out creating your truths and creating your world, and everything is actually you making the world and the theme and plugging your characters in. The whole first half of the book is a mini session zero. Uh, so to go beyond just putting character stats on a sheet, you want to transform these creations and you want to make it exciting as though it's almost like creating the prologue or the first chapter or the pilot episode for your characters. So the first thing I was thinking of was Back to the Future. I'm a big fan of all three main movies, and I was thinking of the question you can ask your characters: what were your characters doing before this? What were your characters doing before right now in the story? This is their backstory, right? And sometimes you can roll for a backstory. I know in D&D 5e you could just roll for the backstory, but your backstory is truly just the tip of the iceberg. You can actually create more bonds with your characters from intertwining their backstories. Intertwining their backstories. I'll give you an example of how I did this in just a moment. One of my absolute favorite ways to create bonds between characters that I've stolen from different games that I absolutely love. But what were they doing before adventuring, and how does their backstory connect to the other player characters? And that's across different tabletop games. And then lastly, this is one that I love is create a movie tagline for your adventure. So an example for a movie tagline, I'll use a movie that I just watched with my wife. We were watching Thor: Dark World. And it would, if you had seen the first Thor, you could talk about Thor as though you already knew him, but you could say something like ancient god of Norse mythology uh, tries to defeat an elven demon lord from destroying the galaxy. Okay. And what do you have in that? You have an antagonist, you have a protagonist, you have what they're trying to do. And what does success look like? The galaxy not being destroyed. So having a movie tagline to draw your characters in, to have them thinking, "What am I doing here? What's my story? How does my character fit into this world?" Those are all important parts of a session zero. So one of my absolute favorite ways to do this is a activity that I've taken a little bit from the game Fate. I've also taken this a little bit from the game Fiasco. Fiasco Second Edition by Jason Morningstar does a wonderful job of really plugging and playing this in to to the mainstream of the game. That game is played with cards, the second edition version of Fiasco, where you actually create bonds between you and a few other characters. What I like to do, and I don't have this template, but you can definitely reach out to me if you want this template later. I create an Excel document that is shared on Google. And each character or player will have their own tab within that Excel document. So my cousin John, really cool dude, hero growing up, 5 years older than I was. So I learned all my pop culture and wonderful references from John. He was playing Lork the Orc, which is a a side kind of stealing from the Glass Cannon podcast. If any of you guys have ever watched that, I'm a big fan of the GCP, GCN now because their whole network got to see those guys when they came to Milwaukee. Super cool. But one of their main original characters was an orc named Lork. This is actually a goblin that John was playing in the Agents of Edgewatch campaign. And Lork needed to be connected to these other folks. If I just started the campaign where none of them knew each other and they all just met in a inn or a bar or a hotel or a restaurant or just wherever out in the middle of a field, there's a lot of work. Like, what are we doing together? Why are we adventuring together? Why do we even know each other? And so doing the bond activity in the session zero can be very helpful. For example, I often will have a list of either a table that my characters and my players can roll on for their characters to find common bonds or bonds that maybe they can't think of if they don't know how to just come up and create one on their own. Maybe Duncan and Lork are childhood friends. Maybe they grew up in the same slum together in Absalom, where this adventure takes place. And because of seeing all that corruption and having to live that hard life, that is what brought them into wanting to be in law enforcement to make a positive change. Maybe Duncan and Willow were a part of the same scouting unit before Duncan was a part of the Edgewatch, the Edgewatch law enforcement. Him and Willow were a part of a scouting party. Maybe it was a private marauding band that would go out and maybe they hunt for food. Maybe they were protecting forest paths from raiders. Really, the characters are going to be connected by this very overlying general bond. And from that, then the players get to use their imaginations as to what that bond even means. Oh, gonna go back here. Forward, forward, forward. This is how you know I'm a live human being and not a recording or a robot. I go back, I make mistakes. All right, so then onward, maybe Willow and Argyle, the dragon person, maybe they are forbidden loves. The elves that Willow came from would never allow a romance between her and the dragon people. So considering what that means, maybe they left on good terms. Maybe they're still in love. Maybe they've fallen out of love, or maybe there was a betrayal where Argyle, wanted to please his people and made it seem like he had betrayed Willow, and she feels very hurt, and he did it to protect her. If he hadn't pretended, she would be dead or in danger, or who knows worse. So there's so much that you can go with on just that very high level general idea that connects these two characters with instant story plots to begin the game. This is just a little goofy. Maybe Argyle and Ubart, they're a part of the same yoga club. They go do that hot, sweaty yoga and sweat it out. That's why they're so ripped and rippling. And then lastly, you can also tie it into religion or just what these characters believe in. Ubart and Lorik may worship the same deity. I believe Ubart worshipped some sort of nature deity within the Pathfinder pantheon. And Lorik, maybe there's a reason he also worships that deity, but maybe Duncan does not. And by the end, what you've done is you've created a web because you do this once where every character is going to go in and say why they are connected to that character, and then you have them switch. If you're using the Excel document version, that means that uh, John, who is Lork, now goes into not Ubart's column, but he's going to go into Argyle's column and say, how is he connected to Argyle? Argyle will go into Willow's tab and say how he is connected. And once you've gone around so that each character is implanted in the backstory and the connections to the other characters, wow, you haven't even played one session. And now you have a more intimate, more rich storyline than you ever did before. Okay, there's some the last of this is blueprint, right? So we did reliability, that's the R in Rob. We did the zero, which is session zero or the O. And now we're on blueprint. So the blueprint is clear expectations that allow your character or allow your players as they're playing in your game to just feel good, to feel good about playing the game, feel good about being in your group, feel good about just interacting with other players and also just knowing what to expect. So, the first thing that I like to make sure everybody has in any group, whether this is a tabletop group or some other type of social group, is an off ramp. There has to be a easy way for somebody to say, "Hey, this isn't for me. I just need to dip out." Because it doesn't help to have somebody who feels obligated to play, but feels like they shouldn't be in this group anymore, or it just doesn't fit what they're doing, or maybe their lifestyle right now just doesn't work with going to repetitious, continuous gameplay. So having an off ramp, an easy way to do this would just say, if at any time you're unable to still be a part of the group, let me know. As the GM, that's a really easy way to create that safety of knowing that a player is not stuck playing forever or having that awkward social fear of having to tell you that they can't play anymore. Uh, Toolbox. So I put tools here, safety tools. We're talking about safety tools, and I actually on the next screen will provide you with a template for the survey that I created, taking a couple pages out of different books, different systems for how to ensure that we are not when I'm playing a game. The last thing I want to do is talk about something that makes somebody so uncomfortable that they can't enjoy playing the game and that it maybe triggers some sort of traumatic event or hurt in their life. There is a time to go through hurt. There is a time to work through our emotions. It just may not be at the gaming table. It may not be with a group of your friends when you're coming in expecting to do one thing, and then you end up realizing, wow, like this really triggered a nerve on something that I didn't want to explore. Lots of games have really great safety tools, but I think one of the best safety tools we have is an open conversation. And I like to use the survey that I send out to my players because then that open conversation becomes easier to have because there's already a safe way for that individual to send in information, and you can make that information sent anonymously, or you can have them tag their name to it if they feel close enough to you as their GM. It just depends about the connection of that relationship. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here is when in doubt, pinky out. What the heck does that mean? If you ever watched the old SpongeBob episode, the very first one where Sandy Cheeks, the squirrel who lives under the sea with SpongeBob and Patrick in Bikini Bottom, she wants to invite SpongeBob and Patrick over to her little biodome. The problem is both SpongeBob and Patrick have to breathe water, right? And so they want to make a really good first impression. They didn't really talk about their safety tools, saying, hey, we actually need water to survive. That didn't happen until the end of the episode. But Patrick has it in his head that when you're going over to a formal party or coming over for tea, you are polite when you sip your beverage with your pinky out. So, what does this have to do with tabletop role playing? When in doubt, pinky out. There should be set expectations of what is polite and what is okay at a gaming table. For example, uh, getting in a fight physically or verbally with another player about a disagreement, that should be on the list of uh, table, I guess, playing efficiencies, but also table etiquette rules. We just don't do it. If you need to argue about something, this should be handled outside of the game and also in a calm manner. Maybe you're not against eating, but eating, you want it to not happen while you're sitting at the table so your dice and everything else doesn't get crumbly. It doesn't get the Cheeto dusty fingers on everything. Maybe there's a break time where your table leaves the physical table if you're playing in person to go snack, or maybe you eat beforehand so that you're not eating during the game. Or maybe your group is totally fine with food all over the place. It makes it better. The stickier and the crunchier and the dustier, the better. Obviously, if you're playing online, that's up to you. But maybe you don't want people crunching all of their food right into their mic. Maybe you have an etiquette about turning on the mute button. So when in doubt, pinky out. Think of the other people. That should always be something you're considering. Think of the other so that all of us can enjoy the game. Okie dokie. Really, what wraps this up in the one that I think is most important is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. This comes from Brene Brown. She is a kind of a social worker researcher. She's written many wonderful books. the Atlas of the Heart, I think, being the most recent one. And even in my 9 to 5 or my 9 to 5 job, we've gone through some of her books because she is fantastic with having people think about group dynamics. How do I interact with other people in a vulnerable, honest, but also a safe way? So you can ask your gamers and, yeah, ask yourself when you're preparing all of these things, say, how can we ensure all members of our group feel safe, respected, comfortable while playing the game? How do you do that? Well, one of those ways that I said is available to you. If you scan the QR code, I actually have a template for a Google Form survey. Just a quick note: you have to be signed in to Google in order to get this form, to get this survey. And if you have two-factor authentication involved, it's going to have you do that two-factor authentication. So, just letting you know, this is up here. I'll also put a link into the notes. I'll go back and update those after our live session is done. But I have found so much comfort in using this survey over time. Being able to ensure that my team members, I'll give you a personal example. I was playing with a individual who recently had lost a child, and the problem with that, not the problem, there's no problem with that. She had no control over that. But in a game, there are some game themes where harm of children, somebody getting hurt, or even that theme of miscarriage or other sensitive themes might come up, or somebody might think of it and not think, how is that affecting another individual? So I know this got really deep really fast, but it's important, because if you care about the people at your table, you should care about what makes them feel safe, respected, and comfortable. So hopefully that form is really helpful to you. It's been super helpful to me, and I'm so glad I've been able to use it. All right. So here comes the part where hopefully you found value. I hope you found at least one thing that you didn't know before. This is where, if you want to learn more, stick around, because I have been developing through content research, through interacting with other people in the tabletop community, a course that can help folks become better at keeping people around longer. It's called Building Games That Last. It's a 6 module course. The first module is about games being startups. So, entrepreneurial startups, when people want to start a business, a lot of the same business tactics is what people are using when they're starting up a tabletop role playing game. You're trying to find your team. You're trying to find investment of time, if not even investment of money for the materials to start playing the game. You try to find a space that you're all going to meet, whether it's online or in person. Games are truly almost like a business startup, and so this first module will explore, how can you get started up? What are the things you need to consider? What are some of the obstacles that other people have come across that have really hamstringed or pigeonholed them into maybe having a game that doesn't start at all? Next, you got preparing your startup. So once you got everybody in place and everybody's ready to go, what are the inner workings and automation and things that you need to get together? Maybe some of the processes that can help speed up your prep time. You'll notice at the very beginning, when I saw how much prep I was putting into that second campaign, while at the same time seeing it did not increase the amount of the people who stuck around to play long term. It's not so much about how much you prep, it's what you are prepping, and are you prepping efficiently. So we'll talk about not just game prep, but also preparing your crew in all sorts of ways. Setting a good foundation. So these are the good foundations that continue to make your games feel better. A good foundation could be some of those table etiquettes. It could also be considering some of the safety tools, but setting a good foundation so that your games are a place that your characters know what to expect. And how do you run a great game, right? There's so much content out there of how to be a good GM. So much content out there on how to game master and how to run this game and how to run that game. I've even created some of that content. But there are other things about running games that people get really nervous of. Do I need to talk in a funny voice? Right. And for those of you guys that have been in the hobby for a long time, you're like, I talk how I want. Well, that's fine. You can talk however you want. But when you're running great games, what are the elements of storytelling? How can you become a better storyteller? How can you keep the flow going? And if you are going to homebrew your own games, how do you build a story that people are getting sucked into and engaging while still giving your players agency, giving them the ability to make their own decisions and have their decisions impact the game itself? Managing your group. So I put a picture of a bunch of cats up here because sometimes managing people feels like herding cats, like literally like herding cats. If you've ever tried to get a cat to do what you want, you'll know that they don't really listen that much. I could have put dogs up there too. My dog doesn't listen to what I tell it to do, although I think they can be a little bit more obedient. Digress. I digress. But managing your groups and managing group dynamics and managing difficult personalities or challenging personalities more so, that is something that is a learned skill. And you will be learning that far beyond the gaming table. So hopefully some of the tactics and ways that you can interact with your players and some of the things that have worked for other people and worked for me can help you through that module. We also want to know, how do you know a game's going to last? How do you know when you should call it? Should you call it? Should you keep playing consistently every day that you guys have scheduled on Mondays at 7 p.m.? Do you just keep doing that? Or do you decide to call it quits? When does a game need to die? Or when does a group need to evolve? Hopefully, some of the criteria that you'll find in that last module will be of help to you. So, what do you get when you go into this course? Well, we have the course is going to be in beta. So, this is a beta course where I actually want individuals from the community to come in and test it. Okay. I don't just want to create a course and be like, here it is, good luck. I want to make sure that we're creating something that lasts, right? Something that can help other people. So when you're a part of the beta course, you'll get the course month by month. And the very first month for that very first module, starting your startup game like an entrepreneur, that is going to come out in July. So July will be the very first course that'll come out. Now, in these modules, there will be video tutorials. You're going to have templates and printable resources, real case studies and real data from real gamers and real people who have run games and played games and done these things before. And then lastly, powerful application. How can you use these tools or use these things to really make a difference? How can you use your knowledge that you get from this course to now make your games better and keep them lasting longer? We're going to have a private Discord beta tester channel. So this is a channel inside the Claim to Game podcast Discord that is just for beta testers and initial launchers of this course. So nobody else is going to be in there but you guys and gals and people. You'll be able to go in, interact with each other, say how you thought this was. I may pose questions and polls and things to the group in order to make that module even better. And then also a free 30-minute chat. I said coaching call, but sometimes it might just be like, Clint, I don't want to type all this feedback out. I would rather just talk to you. We'll hop on a Google Workspace call, Google Meet, talk to each other, figure out what we can do better. I've also helped individuals on situations that they've had with their adventures. How do I get past this? My group split the party, and now I don't know how to get them back together without making them feel like they are being controlled by me, the game master, to go to the story that I want. I want them to still feel agency and have impact, but I still want this game to succeed. How do I get past that? So just any situation, free 30-minute call comes along with anybody who's a part of the course. All right. Normally, once this is fully launched and fully created, the course will run about $100. I wanted for the next 48 hours for anybody who's here on the live stream or who watches this live stream within 48 hours. Right now, it is May 20th, 2025, 11 a.m. Central Time. That's here in the US. And for the next 48 hours, I'm offering 50% off. So that is the beta price is $49.99. Once again, you get access to the Discord channel, the private beta testing channel. You're going to have the course delivered month by month, module by module. You are going to be impacting the content that's in there, and it's limited to 20 seats. So I'm not having anybody beyond 20 seats in this, and this is not lasting beyond 48 hours. So after 48 hours is done, it's shut. Whether there's 20 seats, 5 people, 10 people, 30 people, we're staying at that 20 seat limit so that we can keep that intimate conversation going and really make this thing the best that it possibly can be. So at this point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to leave the code up there in case folks want to jump right in, sign up, register for the course. But I wanted to open it up for Q&A. And there's a few questions that were pre-submitted that I want to talk to, and I think that there are questions that often happen quite a bit. The first thing is, where do I find a group? I can't find people to play with. Well, first things first, go to any Discord community of the game that you want to play. So I'm sure there are plenty of tabletop RPG communities. I'm in a couple myself. Looking for a game is LFA, LFG, looking for a game. That is the acronym, where there are often channels, or even Reddit has different Reddit subreddits where you can say, I'm looking for a game. I want to play with X number of people. So you can find ways to play a game with others by going to the LFA. Another thing you could do is consider paying for a GM. Now, um, I have never done this myself. I was privileged to actually on my podcast talk to some professional GMs. And there's so many benefits of doing professional GMing. There's other people who may be of the opinion, well, I don't need a professional GM. I can do all this on my own. But as you saw, the hours of prep that I put in to try to make my game really awesome and make it last, that was a lot of time. And some people love that. Some people want to do that with their time because that is their thing, is doing that with their time. Other people are like, I don't have that time, but I really want to play. So paying for a GM, if you don't have somebody within your initial group to do it, could be really great. Or you can go that free route with the LFG, right? Looking for a game. There's one more question that I wanted to hit on, and the other thing is, it's more related to running games. Okay, running games. Like, how do I keep track of everything that's going on during the game? How do I keep track of all the different channels of conversation? How do I keep track of all the NPCs? How do I keep track of all the quest sides and side quests and hooks? And how do I remember what this person sounded like when I pretended to be them with a funny voice? Or how do I keep my players engaged? Instead of answering that here, I'm going to direct you back to the course. That will be in the module about running great games. There's some wonderful resources out there that I'm going to plug. If you are a GM that want to learn to prep more, definitely go check out Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master or The Lazy Dungeon Master. Lazy Dungeon Master came first by Mike Shea. Those books have revolutionized the way that I play games. You can even listen this Thursday. I'm going to be releasing a video episode of my interview with Guy Milner from the Unconventional GMs podcast. He also has a blog called Burn After Running, which is all about running one-shot RPGs. But Guy has also read those books. He's also very much of the mindset that there are ways that we can prep less, play more, and really lean into what our characters and our players have to say. So if you don't want to use any of those resources, feel free to sign up for the course. I know that it's going to be of use to you, benefit to you, and you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks to everybody who joined in live. Thanks for anybody who joined in later and watched the replay. Why is it important to build groups that last? Why? Well, I want to throw up a character here. This little guy, his name is Langston Winfoot. He was my very first character. He was my very first character that I ever created. He was a halfling barbarian in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. My brother-in-law was the one who was GMing the game. And I remember Langston, his whole backstory, right? He was raised by wolves in the wild, kind of like Mowgli from the Jungle Book, Rupert Kipling's novel. And he had a glaive, right? Something from, if you ever played the game Dynasty Warriors back in the early 2000s, he had a glaive that he would swing and in rage as he was protecting his friends. In that very first game, that very first character, that's really what it was all about, was the people that I played with. The people who I connected with, the relationships that I made, I still interact with some of those people today, and we haven't maybe physically been in the same space for many years. A text here, a chat there, being able to connect with that original group has been really special for me. And it all started with this group that lasted. It lasted far beyond the gaming table. So that's why it's so important. It's important to have games that last, and you really don't want to give up on that. So once again, regular price normally $100, beta price 49.99. I want you to have games that last. And maybe you don't need that. Maybe you're able to take what you have today from what we talked about today, take some of those, put it into your own strategy, your own toolbox. Don't forget that you have that free consent form that you can survey your players to make sure that you're touching on only topics they feel comfortable with. But ultimately, please make sure that you just keep playing. Playing is one of the greatest joys in life, and building games that last beyond the table are things that you can do right now, but you can also do it, and you can do it with a community. And I would love for you to be a part of the Claim to Game podcast community. We have a lot of really great guests, we have a lot of great material, and we're just glad you're here. So, without that, I'm just going to end the live stream. Thanks for joining today, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Uh, Peace out.